All right, we are live. It is January 21st, 2021. Hard to believe. And we're back with a really big class. This is our first class of the new year, and I am so excited because today we have all return guests. Fenella Humphreys is our guest teaching artist. She was the very first guinea pig teacher in the big class back in April of 2020, and I'm really happy to have her here today. Our performers are also returnees. We're starting with Libby Sherwood playing some Mozart, and then Ellie will play some excerpts for us, and we'll finish off the class with Helena playing some Ysaye. So a great mix of repertoire with some wonderful players. And we're doing things a little bit differently, or I've kind of decided to condense the format a little bit, have 3 performers, which means we should have more time for questions at the end of the class, and even between performers we can have time for some questions and a little bit more interaction. So if you're in on the Zoom call, let's do this. When the performers are finished, let's pop our cameras on, applaud, and you can watch the teaching with your camera on or off. But if you have anything to say, or ask, pop your camera on, raise your hand if you know how to do that within the Zoom app, and we'll be a little bit more interactive. Likewise, if you're on YouTube, we will try to monitor the comments on the YouTube channel and get them into the class if you have anything you want to ask. So I'm excited that so many people are here, and I think we should get to it. So Libby Sherwood is playing Mozart G Major Concerto, first movement, and let's get to the music.
Hey, is it down to me now? Hi, Libby.
Hello.
Hi. Well done. That's right. I need to do what I was told to do to get you in my screen. Hang on. Except it won't let me. That's fine. I'll leave it like it is. Um, that's fantastic. You're. No, hang on. Sorry. Give me. Okay. So
Did you find the pin?
there's a pin on there, but I can't find the thing that was there before that.
So
Oh,
on
there was
Libby's
something that says
video,
hide non-video participants. That's better. Yeah,
that
that's great. Hi. Sorry.
Hello
I'm
again.
rubbish with Zoom. That's fantastic. I mean, there's so much good stuff. You've obviously like really prepared it well, thought very hard about so many things within it. There are times when I kind of wish you behaved less well.
Yeah, I was also thinking that. It's a
It
bit
feels very
serious.
organized, very structured, and that's a wonderful thing. What are you preparing it for just now?
It's for masters auditions.
Okay, so you want to make sure that it is obviously organized, but you're not actually in the situation where you can't be too free. I mean, there are some situations like orchestral auditions where you know that they want a specific thing out of you for what they hear. But actually for masters auditions, be yourself. So so feel free to take the music where as far as you want to take it, as far as it feels right for you. Um, should we go back to the beginning? And it's always a good place to start.
Should I just play?
Play me a few bars, and
Okay.
I'll try and get your attention to stop you.
Oh.
Okay, so already you've actually fixed something that I was going to say from the recording, which was it felt in the opening phrase, like everything was very similar. The bar shapes were very similar, so it kind of by the after to have four of them in a row that were kind of shaped all the same.
Yeah.
It was beginning to get a bit tiresome, but actually you didn't do that at all this time. So just whatever you did this time, always do it.
Okay.
Think about that long phrase shape. There's something that feels quite stiff in your upper body when you're playing. I don't know, is that something that people have or that you've felt?
um, yeah, I actually noticed particularly today having stiffness in my neck here, which is a new thing.
That's not a good thing.
I don't know if that's, yeah, I
I
do
mean,
feel stiff.
I know that. I mean, for me personally, I can't wear a roll neck jumper. But I mean, and everybody is so different with this because I find that if I've got extra distance between me and the violin, I do tense up because my body's used to having nothing between the two of us. So the more it's pushed away, the more all of the angles are different. So the more it will change everything. But if you're used to wearing a roll neck, then
Yeah.
that's not going to be an issue for you, obviously. But maybe something to think about. I don't know. Are your knees bent while you're playing,
Um,
and is your stomach relaxed?
I think my knees are mostly bent when I'm playing. I don't lock them.
That's good.
What was the second thing you said? Is my
Is your
stomach?
stomach relaxed?
Um, I hadn't really thought about it.
Play the opening phrase again. It's just one of those things that if your stomach is relaxed, then actually things tend to become looser in your arms and your shoulders. The thing is, your right arm. It's hard to tell about your left shoulder, but your right shoulder and your right arm seem really low and relaxed, and everything seems to be in a good place. It's just there's something sometimes in the video that it just looks like your back's a bit stiff.
Yeah.
Um, and that can end up having effect on sound obviously and having an effect on even musicality, so it's always good to be thinking about these things. And in any case, it's good to have things that you hold on to when you're in stressful situations, like the relaxed knees and relaxed stomach things are the things that I hold on to always. So yeah, just try and play the first phrase and see what it feels like playing with your relaxed stomach.
Okay.
Does it feel any different?
Uh,
Not really.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird. I don't really know how to relax my stomach. Well, I felt like I was thinking more about relaxing generally, which felt and it felt better.
I mean, it sounded beautiful. I mean, you did look slightly freer, definitely from an outsider's perspective. But maybe that also is because I wanted you to be. Right. That's just a little, I mean, by the by thing to think about. But actually, honestly, the stomach thing, if you have a think about that, there's Thomas Rebor, a wonderful, wonderful viola professor, said that to me in a masterclass once. And I found it a very, very strange concept until I started trying to do it, and then realized that it had a massive effect. That as soon as my stomach was relaxed, my sound was totally different. So it's something that's worth thinking about. Where shall we go? Where's good to go from? Do you want to go from the beginning again? Think long phrases.
Yeah.
Because so much of the fine detail is great. You know, the little ideas, but then they don't always transfer into going the long distance as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I have for you. Have you got music in front of you with bar numbers? Or
yeah, I have. Yeah.
So the upbeat to bar 58 and the downbeat to bar 58.
Yeah.
You never know with Zoom actually how much it's distorting like volume side of sound. It's almost at the moment almost inaudible.
Oh, okay.
So it might not be in reality, and I totally get that. I don't think that those two notes are so completely outside the character of where we are. I don't think it's. Sorry, you've got to forgive me. I've got arms on my armchair, and I keep hitting them. They're still involved in what we're saying at that point. So to have them so completely quiet, so it's just a wonder. And then the next thing that I was going to say comes a few times actually. When you have a long note and then you have a run of semiquavers like that, you tend to sort of stop. They should the semiquavers should happen because the long note before them, and it's almost like your head's gone, okay, there's the long note and now there's the semiquavers, and I know how to play the semiquavers and I know how to play the long note, but actually they're not talking to each other.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you want to go from wherever suits you before that? Shape. We've got that going? Or
I think I'm wanting to go towards the B,
okay,
but then that makes it difficult
exactly.
to go into the semiquavers. I could try it the other way round.
Right, the other way. I mean, it's quite often the case, even when you come to Mozart, that a downward line takes us down, and an upward line takes us up. I mean, that's so much built into Baroque music, but I think it's certainly the scale into the forte is definitely taking us towards that. So you certainly need to have prepared yourself so that you can do that.
Okay.
So I don't mean that you want to bulge out of the B. Just that that the phrase doesn't end at the end of it.
Okay.
Did it again.
Yeah.
We're so used to preparing ourselves to be in the right place. So makes it much easier to start the semiquavers. But hang on, are you playing it on a down?
Yeah.
So it's just making sure the end of it, there's still a flow out of it, even though your bow doesn't stop, but you're still giving yourself the space to re-articulate. So I'm kind of actually, are you going on an up bow or a down bow on the semiquavers?
I'm starting the semiquavers on a down.
Okay, so you're doing down down.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are ways of still somehow making the sound spin and continuing the sound on the long note, and still also managing so that you're not stopping and starting again. That sounds great from here. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously,
Then I feel like if I play the semiquavers here, I then get stuck.
Then don't go through so much bow in the long note.
Yeah.
It also works.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Does that feel better?
I think so. I think I need to just play it.
It's one of those problem-solving things where there's the easy answer, which is you finish the note and you come back. And then there's what's usually the harder answer, but that might make more musical sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's always worth fighting for that. And I know it means more work and it means more effort, but actually at the end of the day, it has such a better effect than stopping at the end of that note.
Yeah.
And it's sort of thing that comes up all the way through Mozart. So it's worth figuring out your ways of dealing with it.
Yeah.
Early on. Great. Do you want to do the next phrase? Which I absolutely loved.
From that.
Yeah. Sounds great. That I do have an issue with. I don't have a problem with you playing an open string. I think it's great. But if you're going to play an open string, it sounds really strange if you go...
Yeah.
So find some way of using your vibrato that it can colour the next note, but that it's not suddenly empty note and then vibrato. Because it really, your ear gets so drawn to it, because it's so different from the first note. So I think the brightness of the D string there is great, and especially because it does feel like horns or from bones or something. But then make sure that the next note isn't too vibrato-y.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'd actually probably do is I'm taking the sound into the next note. I might warm it up slightly, but I'd probably start with that vibrato. But you don't want to have that awful thing of, I mean, you don't want it to be like that. So it's got to be very considered and kind of planned, that you're really hearing what you're doing.
Did you also use speed up the bow going into the next note as well? Maybe that's where the vibrato.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking if I was to do that with vibrato. Yeah, I would if I was doing that. It would depend what I was going for in that specific moment, because I might not use any vibrato at all. So that they both have the same sort of kind of brass instrumenty sound. But it was more a kind of, if you particularly want to have vibrato there, I would say finding a way of doing it that doesn't involve having a big hit of it on the front of the note is really important. Yeah. But there are lots of ways that you can make that then work.
Okay. I don't know what to try first now. Can I try it without vibrato?
Try whatever feels right.
Yeah.
I think what you were doing before on the last notes of that phrase, so the ones, the crotchets, they're a slightly different character anyway, so that's fine to have that spark of vibrato on those. It's just that difference between the two minutes. So don't change what you were doing with those, because it was a really good character.
Okay.
Just find some way of dealing with the second minute so that it doesn't just jump out as being oh. I mean, there are so many options for what you could do, and so many options for the way you could see it. Because I mean, I see it as like trumpets or something, but he doesn't have daggers on those notes, so it doesn't have to be that. There are options, so just one of those things. Go away and think about it. But it was just something that really jumped out to me, listening to you play it through. So, probably worth thinking about.
Okay.
Do you want to keep going?
Yep.
Tiny thing there. I would after the long note there, and don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to to attach those two. Make sure you start that run of semiquavers in a place that you can make it one line. You go so far and then you come back and you start again.
Wait, which is this at the beginning of where I just played?
There is this bar 90. So
Okay.
There's something, I don't know whether it's where you shift or change strings or something, but then it comes down in volume, and actually I think it's more successful if you can get it to go all the way through that line from the upper A.
Should I just play from that bit?
Yeah.
Um, oh, do you mean connecting the minim to the...
No, I don't mean connecting it. I just mean that if you start from the upper eight, from the first semiquaver, if it starts too loud, you can't
Oh, I see. Yeah,
go
okay.
through that line. So
Yeah.
you're going a little bit of the way, and then you come back down in volume, and then
Yeah.
you carry on the journey. And it would be more successful if it didn't start quite so loud, so that you've got all of that space to go to the end of the phrase.
Okay.
Okay, that's already so much better. But remember that the E string will just sound louder. It doesn't matter what you do. So make sure that as you go to the E string, you're not playing it in a way that it jumps out. The open E jumps out after the D. That was great. Yeah, that had much more of a sweep all the way through that line.
Yeah.
Great. Ceci's gonna tell us that we have to stop, aren't you?
We have time tonight, so if you have 3 or 4 more minutes that you want to go, do it.
Is there anything that you'd like to cover?
When I just listened to myself again, I was thinking, it sounded to me like I was sort of accenting a lot. In a way, because I kind of like this sort of, I don't know what the right word is, maybe sticky sort of articulation in this for some reason. I think it sounds good. But I don't know whether me trying to do that is accenting things that I don't want to be accented.
Occasionally I find that you go to the same point throughout a phrase. And I don't know if that's what you're thinking of as accents. And to me, it just sounds like you haven't 100% always established what's happening harmonically and where the points are that you really want to go to within a phrase. Or there'll be something that, like with that scale up, with a technical thing that means that something's jumping out that you don't necessarily actually want to jump out, or like that last time, the penultimate time, that because the E string is so bright, it automatically shouts out just that bit more. That was the only thing that I was thinking as far as that sort of thing was concerned. That it just felt sometimes like you got into a habit for repetitive phrasing, so you've got used to playing like a small cell within a long phrase in a particular way, which means that you play it each time it's repeated in the same way. And actually, if you went back and looked at the harmonies, you'd find that yes, he repeats, but actually each one is saying something slightly different because the harmonies are different.
Yeah.
But I think if you go and have a listen back, and I'd say leave it a few days before you do it if you've got the time to do that, because I always find if I listen back straight away, I don't actually really hear what I did 100%. I hear what I think I did. Whereas if I leave it a few days and I come back to it, I've forgotten what I think I did. So I actually hear more what I really did. And then it's easier to have that distant picture of what you're listening to. And have a listen out for those places where you feel that maybe you are accenting. And think, are you actually accenting? Or have you just not established exactly where that phrase is going?
Yeah.
And could you take the phrase further? And I think generally if you go at it that way and think about we had an amazing Rainer Schmidt, amazing violinist, came to do some work with the chamber orchestra that I work with a bit in Germany. And we were playing Mozart quartets but with chamber orchestra. And we had 3 or 4 days of rehearsal with him. We never once got to play a whole phrase. he took every single phrase into its smallest cell. So each time, you know, in Mozart, the way every phrase has 29 different characters in it. But he separated out each of those characters, and we never put them back together again. And it was an amazing way of working, because it makes you actually really think what those characters are doing and how far you can take them. And by being so secure about what the separate characters are doing, then somehow, weirdly, it's much easier to go between them. So even though you've not particularly practiced the whole phrase, I mean, we never did. It got to the point on the rehearsal before the first concert, and the principal second violin said, excuse me, we've never played this phrase before. Can we at least just play the phrase as a whole phrase before the concert? And he was very disappointed, I think, in us for that. But it was an amazing way of working, and it's something that I've actually come back to when I'm preparing other things now, because, as I say, by being so secure on those little tiny elements of a phrase, suddenly things that were difficult going between characters suddenly become very easy, because you know what you're doing with the characters, you know where the characters change. It's like when you've got difficult passage work, and if you haven't established actually where the change of strings are, or the change of position with the left hand are, and it's very difficult to get between the notes. So it's the same thing but in a musical form. So I would say go through definitely as well, and figure out where take a phrase, figure out where all of those character changes happen, and do the most extreme version that you possibly can find of each of those little characters, and then put the phrase back together and see what happens. I mean, it will be a surprise whatever happens. But it was just an amazing experience to have somebody work with you in that way, and it's definitely something that I think is worth everybody having a go at some point. But yeah, good luck with your auditions. It's sounding great.
Thank you.
Your playing is very, very beautiful playing.
Thanks.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you, Libby. Thanks for getting us off on a really bright and wonderful start. I would like to just ask Fenella, if you don't mind, a couple of questions about Mozart, you and Mozart, before we move on. And these are just sort of things that came to my mind. Do you have a favorite Mozart concerto?
No, being completely honest. I think I maybe enjoy playing A major most. Just, I love playing D major as well. I've not played G major as much, as a soloist. I mean, I studied it when I was a student,
yeah.
But it's not one that I get asked to play so much. In fact, people don't often ask for Mozart concertos, and so it's really it's such a joy when they do.
Yeah.
Because they are such incredible music. I mean, I grew up being utterly scared of them, because as I was studying, as I was a kid, and then as I was a student, it seemed like it was all about this crystalline perfection, and it had to be perfect. Everything had to be just right and pretty and perfect. And then I was really, really lucky, and I got to play sight read quite a few times, string quartets with Colin Davis listening, who would then coach after we'd sight read through. So I never knew what I was going to be asked to play. There was wine afterwards, so that made up for the stress of sight reading. But he said something then that really, I mean, he kept saying the same things, which was, Mozart wasn't this, this perfect person. There's humanity in this music, and there's so much character in it. And actually, as soon as you start worrying about every fine little perfect detail, you don't have space to find the characters. You don't have space to, and it's not. I don't know. I don't think Mozart should be pretty.
Right.
So, I mean, that changed my mind into thinking that he shouldn't be pretty. So, I enjoy playing him a lot now. in a way that I never did before because I was too scared to let rip. But
yeah. And then one more question about Mozart before we go on. What cadenza do you play? Do you write your own? Do you have favorite cadenzas? Do you?
I mean, I obviously learnt the ones that everybody plays. I mostly, when I've played Mozart concertos, unless I've specifically been asked not to, I've done my own cadenzas. Whether they're good or not is another question.
Do you write them out?
I write out a starting point, which I guess I mostly stick to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Libby's written a great one, but she didn't want to share it today. So.
Oh no! I would have loved to have heard that.
Next time.
Oh, shame.
Okay, let's move on now to Ellie, who's going to share some excerpts with us. And I think if it's all right, well, we can do it either way. She's got part of the Brahms Third Symphony and part of Mozart 39 Finale. We could share the video of both of them, and then you can get to work, or we can share them one at a time. Do you have a preference?
I'm happy either way. Do you have a preference?
Let's play them as is.
Okay, great.
So the
I'm
two
going to try and find the
Do you have the part?
scores that you sent me as well.
Okay. We'll let the video start.
Well done. That's not a pleasant thing to have to do. I know. Are you preparing them for auditions or for studying or for just general life?
Yeah, I have a couple of auditions for fellowships and things like that, but it just keeps coming up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been so lucky in my life that I've only ever done one orchestral audition, and it's just been good fortune that life has just kind of worked out that I've never been in a position that I had to do lots of auditions, but I've sat and listened to quite a lot in my chamber orchestra in Germany, so yeah, I mean every certainly when it comes to orchestras, every orchestra is kind of looking for the same things but also different things. So obviously if you're playing for a chamber orchestra, it's a slightly different expectation, I think, in a lot of cases than a symphony orchestra. But I mean, for a start, they're great. should we start with Brahms? Which I've only ever played, I think, twice in orchestra, and it's one of my absolute favorite symphonies. It's such an incredible thing. How do you feel about that start?
I got a bit confused because some recordings kind of is more of a broad, like it's not attack, and then some are a bit of attack start, like da da or wah. That makes sense.
I think it's one of those things that actually, at the end of the day, we want to show in that situation, actually in an audition. You know, every conductor is going to have a different idea of how they want that sound to be anyway. I think what's the most comfortable thing to do. It's not a comfortable beginning for something when it's just you on your own anyway. So I think to find a way of starting that note that gives you freedom in your sound, is the most important thing. Do you want to just start that first note or that first bar? Okay, so are you breathing in or are you breathing out before you start the note?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, do it once more and actually think about what you're doing.
Okay.
Was it in or an out breath?
Yeah.
Sorry, which one?
Breathe out.
Breathe out.
Breathe out, I think.
Always breathe out. Because I think the minute that you breathe in, I mean, everybody thinks, I'm breathing in and it's going to make the phrase right. And actually, all you're doing quite often is creating tension. And so with something like that, when you just want that freedom in sound, just make sure you breathe out. And make sure your knees are, you know, not locked. I know I just said this all in the previous class, but it's just stuff that's so important at the beginning of something like this. So yeah, try it once more and just think as much freedom in the sound as you can find. I'm going back to my phone, not because I'm not interested in your playing, it's because I've got the music on my phone from where Cecily sent it earlier. There was something that... There was some place where I noticed that the rhythm was a little bit askew. There was something that felt like more like a triplet than a quaver, and I can't remember which. Sorry, I can't remember where it was. But just maybe go back and sorry, that's really unhelpful of me. Go back and have a listen to the recording and check that everything is like rhythmically as sound as it needs to be. It was just something, and I think it happened twice. I think what you're doing with this one is actually really, really beautiful. The only thing I'd say is just sometimes there is a lack of freedom in the sound, and you know that could partly be the recording, and that whole situation of it. You know, if I heard you live, it would probably be totally different. But when it comes to the quavers and the triplets after A, can you play me that phrase from A? Okay, do you hear the difference between your phrase at A, so with this beautiful sound and beautiful shape, and then the quavers suddenly go, okay, now I'm being a serious student, and the same thing with the triplets, and it's all right, everything is right, everything is in its place, but it's like you've kind of switched off the music. And actually, if you did if you played those bars as you're playing all of the rest of it, with that line, with that sense of space and that sense of freedom in the sound, it would just take it to a totally different level of playing. So can you play that phrase again? And it doesn't matter if you fall off them. Play with like real gesture and with the same sound that you have beforehand. I mean, that's already in a totally different world. There is one. It feels like there are too many landing points now. So it feels like you land on every half bar, and I know that there are some places that you need to go to, like you need to go to the downbeat, to the end of the crescendo, in the quavers bar. But actually, I think we're feeling every half bar as well. So once more, but see if you can get that line to go all the way from the half. Sorry, let me see. If 1, 2, the half bar of the third of A. Have you got the same letters? Yeah. So if that crescendo can go all the way from that point and really take us there. Great. I'd say even still watch that downbeat of the first quaver, because that's still slightly landing on there. But other than that, it's so much more. It makes so much more sense, and I hope it's more fun to play like that. Okay, should we move on? I'm very aware that there's only kind of a small amount of time. Should we move on to Mozart? There's one place that I just want to question and note with you. It's the evil bit. So it's before you have. So if you got bar numbers.
Yeah.
It's when the second half, the last note, of 27. In this edition that Cecily sent, it's an A flat, and I'm pretty sure you played an F.
I've got A flat as well. I don't know what I played. Maybe.
Okay. Sorry, A flat. I'm pretty sure you played an F, and the same. When there's another part of that phrase. Oh yeah, so like 8 bars or whatever it is before that is the same thing. So just be absolutely sure that you're playing the right note. At the beginning, this is something that, I mean, it's a personal thing. When you have the dotted crotchet followed by the semiquavers in the second full bar, you very much. For me, I feel like that should have a little bit of release in it, both when it's in piano and when it's in forte, and I think that would give it more sparkliness. It makes it feel kind of heavy, and this music is definitely not heavy music. So can you play just the very opening phrase, and don't be scared of being quiet. It sort of feels like you're so scared of it being too loud that you kind of everything becomes so small. And just relax with the music, and yes, it needs to be quiet, but don't let the music suffer for that, or the sound. Okay, so the same thing. Sorry, my phone keeps going to sleep. When you've got dum dugga dum. It suddenly gets kind of very gluey there, and it just feels it feels like it loses the spark. And I think if you had a little bit more release in the sound, and actually it would help the fact that it needs to be so quiet, but it would also give it that bit of excitement. Okay, it might. I think it's too much now on the release on the dotted crotches, but that might also be the sound on Zoom, so it's hard to tell. But I don't mean to stop the sound completely, but just that it doesn't glue through to the next note. That there's some playfulness to it, so in between the two. That feels certainly. I don't know how it feels to you, but it feels like it's got a lot more life to it. When it comes to all of this semiquaver passage work, this stuff is also hard. How do you practice it?
I mostly practice in rhythms and then just open strings. But yeah.
Good. Do you practice double stops? I would go away and practice double stops. And so many of the interval, you've got so much that's fourths and intervals that are quite open that they have to be so perfect. And also I find with this sort of thing that if we play it too tempered, it just sounds out of tune. And if you played it slowly like that, it would probably sound fine. But as soon as you've got it at speed, it just sounds... everything sounds a little bit sour, and it's not like that all the way through, but just there are notes here and there that I'm wishing that you played a third slightly higher and things like that. So I would go away and practice everything with double stops, check that everything's sitting in exactly the right place. Do you want to carry on from
Fenella?
Yeah,
Can I
we
just...
have to go.
No. I just want to interrupt because I know there are a lot of violinists logged into this Zoom call here who are hanging on your every word on how to practice the finale of Mozart 39 because everyone's practicing it right now. It's a very popular excerpt right now. And would you mind just showing what you mean about practicing the double stops?
Okay, so
thank you.
Let me actually... I'm not going to be able to see you for a second. I'm going to get this up on my screen so I can actually see the... there we go. Because that was doing my head in because my phone keeps switching itself off. Right, I can actually see the score now, which is helpful. Hang on, nearly there. Right, so I would... make sure that fourth is obviously in tune, but also that the E flat... This is very good for me because I'm playing an E violin and I'm trying to learn how to play it. And I still don't know where any of the notes are. So making sure that... So this, for anybody who's got the music up, this is bar 16. So... basically doing that through the whole passage. And obviously with the scale, not so much. I make sure that I'm anchored into the open strings. So that everything is anchored into the instrument. Making sure that you're checking stuff where it's possible against all the open strings, and making sure also that while you're doing that, the ring of the instrument, because every instrument, there's something that rings differently when it's properly in tune, and you know that, and actually practicing in a way where you're focusing on that ring is also super helpful, because it's something that we kind of switch our ears off to a lot of the time. And actually practicing for 5 minutes where all you're focusing on is making sure that that ring stays the same, and it can make all the difference in the world to our intonation, and to really knowing that your fingers are going in the right place. And then, you know, that sort of thing where you're just, rather than just sitting on the note and moving it to make sure it's in tune, once you've figured out where it actually is, just repeat it a few times to make sure that you're at your fingers dropping down into the right place, and that you're not drawing your finger too far back, so you're actually you really are just, your hand is in the right place, that it does just drop, and that you know where it drops to. And those things are just like it, when you think like that and focus like that, it's really tiring for 5 minutes, but it makes like 10 hours of practice difference than if you just carried on practicing normally. I think a lot of the time. Is that what you meant, Cecily?
That's exactly what I meant. Thank you very much. That's really, really helpful. And I think especially for that passage where mostly people are worried about the string crossings and staying even and having the bow feel like it's in control and not flying out all over the place, taking that time, like you said, the 5 minutes that is worth 10 hours.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
But, I mean, like you were saying, I would absolutely also be practicing the rhythms. So going through all the permutations, so that the difference that makes to, I find, to my coordination is incredible, because also it points out exactly where are the string crossings that I don't really actually honestly know in my head where I'm crossing, because so much of the time we just assume we know. We know that we're going vaguely in the right place, but it's that thing of being absolutely 100% sure in our muscles and in our brain every one of those string crossings where it is and how far you have to travel, because actually often we travel further than we need, and knowing the exact distances is also, you know, it makes such a massive difference to, you know, to whether you get through the passage well or not. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's there's lots of ways of practicing this thing that make a massive difference, but you're definitely going down the right route with that. Cecily's still sitting there, which makes me think that you're about to tell us to stop.
No, I'm going to tell you that you have 3 or 4 minutes to wrap up.
Okay. There was something that I did think when I was listening through. I'm just trying to remember. Can you just play me the last 3 bars of the first page? If yours are the same. I think what I've got is what you've got.
Is that bar 38?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. I knew it was something at the end of that page. I don't think you want to do that.
Yeah.
Something to finish it with panache. Definitely that page with panache, but without just kind of sledgehammering through it. It's yeah. I know you need to make sure that you're then in the right place in your bow to play the next phrase and all the rest of that, but make sure that it finishes in a way that feels right. Actually, can you carry on? Oh, that's what. Yeah, okay. try and make sure that you don't have too much kind of bow vibrato going on in these passages, because it's the sort of thing that if you're doing it in an orchestral edition, it's the sort of thing that you're listening, knowing that would stand out within a group. If there's too much, if that kind of Bauch, you say in German, the kind of stomach to the sound, try and make sure that it doesn't, that there is a long phrase through those, and that you're not bouncing on them too much. And also I'd say make sure that there's a sense, without going kind of manically different, that there's a different feel to the major and to the minor. So it doesn't want to be hugely different, but just some sense that in your sound that you understand that they're two different phrases. And I know there was something else that I noticed when I was listening. Can you go from after the offbeats?
After the what, sorry?
Offbeats. So I think 62.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
I just looked at you and I just dropped my bow. Wouldn't want that to happen.
I'm sorry, I have that effect on people. What can I say? So from the beginning, wherever it is, 69 or something. So if you play them all the same, it means that you don't get any sense of that taking us to the A flat. So make sure you take us to the A flat. It's just one of those things that you can get so easily caught up in doing a shape the same each time, but actually if you repeat it too many times the same way, it no longer makes sense. And the same with following that line at 62, the chromatic line. Just make sure you really feel that line going down as well, because I know we're so caught up with orchestral excerpts of playing them right and playing them neatly and making sure that the tempo doesn't fluctuate, and you're amazing at that, by the way. The tempo is brilliant, and so often it jumps around, dots around, and it didn't do that at all, so it's fantastic. But also we want to hear the music, and like I say, it's so easy to get so caught up in doing it right that actually we bypass the music. So yeah, I'd say just now take it to the next level with making sure that, like, all of the things, if it was a concerto, all of the musical things that you would do, make sure you're still doing them. But it's fantastic. And
can I just ask one question? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, I always have, especially with this excerpts, how to like untrain bad habits, because like I've been playing this since I was like, 13 now. And I don't know, I feel like I just keep getting into doing the same thing. I feel like listening back to my video and then listening back to a video from 3 years ago was like the same thing.
I think in those cases, it's really important to identify what is the thing that's bothering you.
Mm.
So what is it in this that is bothering you particularly that's the same, that hasn't changed?
It's just stuff like clarity and, well, I would put rushing and things like that. And then...
Okay,
and like,
I would say that sometimes when you hear stuff like that, it's so ingrained in your ears to hear them.
Yeah.
That you hear them amplified in a way that's not happening. With clarity, I would say just think about that brightness. Think about what the things are that are stopping the brightness of clarity of sound. And for me, it was just that sometimes, like I said, sometimes you were kind of almost slurring notes in together, whereas actually I don't reckon you'd have done that if it had been a Mozart sonata or a Mozart string quartet. because you're so used to how you learnt to do something, maybe it's difficult to step outside that. And I think sometimes just turning things on their heads and making yourself for a week play it in a completely different way, even if it's not a way that you actually want to play it, but forcing yourself to do something that's dramatically different from what you've always done, can take you into a different place that then lets you go back to a place that's the place you want to be. Whereas if you just keep trying to refine what you're already doing, you'll carry on in the same place, and not necessarily changing the things that you want to change. So, I mean, I would say that's definitely somewhere to start with that. You know, even play it with the bow upside down. You know, hold the bow in the other end and see what happens. And my violin teacher used to make me do that just to annoy me, I think. But it does. It has an effect on how physically you get around the instrument and how you end up creating sound. So I'd say definitely force yourself into a different place with it if that's bothering you, and then come back to it as it was. Do a recording, see if that has helped the things that you were worrying about, but don't be too hard on yourself, because it sounds great.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really great.
Thank you.
Beautiful
Well, thanks
playing.
well done. It was beautiful.
So that made me think of two things to ask you.
Oh.
I like this when I have time to ask questions. The first is, there are occasionally things that you say that I'm like, oh yeah, my teacher used to tell me that. And I always forget that my teacher studied with your teacher. And so I also had to play things with the bow turned around, which is very annoying. You're right. The other thing I was thinking, people often, you know, there's a change that happens, I think, between the time that you're a student and the time that you're not a student, or, you know, when you're making, as we wish we were, making our livings playing on stage, where rather than playing something once and then putting it away, we get to play things again and again and again. And I just wonder, what makes you more excited, returning to an old friend or opening something brand new?
I'm both, for different reasons. I love coming back to old things because I'm inherently lazy. And going back to old things means that at least, you know, the notes are in some form still already in my hand. And I'm always irrationally scared for somebody who plays a lot of new music, I'm irrationally scared of getting a score for the first time. And I always feel so bad because a composer will send me a score and I'll get really excited that it's arrived, but I'll be too scared to start playing it, and it'll be days before I can get over that hurdle, unless I have to learn it in 2 days. Obviously, then I don't do this, but it will take me like a few days of working myself up to actually starting to figure out how it works, how it goes together, what it is, how difficult it is, how much work it's going to entail, all those things. So there's a kind of a fear that comes with a new score, but then also excitement, and it's great working on something completely new, and it takes you to new worlds, and you know, everything that comes with a new piece of music. I don't get that so much if it's a new piece of music that I know. So like if it's a new work that I've listened to in the past, that's more if it's new music that is brand new, that I have that fear. You know, I'll get super excited about learning a new piece of repertoire that's like standard repertoire that I've never played before. I don't think I like one more than the other.
I knew it was an impossible question, but I wanted to hear what you'd say. Yeah,
but no, I do love that thing of coming back to something after a while that you've always loved performing. And I've just been listening to edits from a CD that I like, literally 4 CDs. But there's one that I did almost exactly a year ago, and I've just now heard the edits, and it's taken me back to playing the music as well. And it's music that because it's concerto repertoire. I haven't played it in all this time, and I'd normally be playing this repertoire fairly regularly. I had it a few times in the summer, and of course the concerts got cancelled. So this is probably the longest that I've gone without playing this piece, and coming back to it is just, it's such a warm, gorgeous feeling that this music that has been such a great friend since I was 16. It's just such a great feeling to come back to it. But then, yeah, equally, the new stuff is amazing.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our final performer of the day, and that is, I'm just blanking, it's Helena, who's going to play some Ysaye for us, the first movement of the Ysaye's second sonata. This is the Obsession movement, so here we go.
So I just realised I was muted and you couldn't hear me. Well done.
Thanks.
This is the first Ysaye sonata that I learned, and because I really wanted to play number 3 with my previous violin teacher, but he said, "Don't be ridiculous. You're nowhere good enough to play that." Because somebody had played it at school, and I totally fell in love with it. And I'd never heard any Ysaye before. I'd heard recordings of him playing, but I didn't know that he'd written music as well. And then my next violin teacher gave me this, and I was like the cat who'd had the cream. I was so happy. It's such great music. I mean, it's worth saying for anybody who's listening who doesn't know it. So Ysaye was one of the great violinists, and you can still hear recordings of him playing. But he was also a great composer, and he wrote this set of 6 sonatas after Bach's sonatas and partitas, and each of them is dedicated to a different famous violinist of his day. So this one's dedicated to Jacques Thibault, who's one of my all-time violin heroes, and this sonata, some of the sonatas he references Bach, and in most of them he doesn't like reference Bach, but in this one he clearly very much does. And so there's this play between Bach and between the Dies Irae plain chant, so you hear it all the way through. There's so that's something that I definitely think we could enjoy more, that you could bring out more, that you could have more fun with, the ways that he plays with that and the way he plays with the Bach. So my feeling, how do you see the opening? How do you feel the opening?
I think I can make it sound a bit more, well, I'm stuck between trying to make it sound a bit jokey or to be kind of quite like, just play it exactly how Bach would want it to be played.
So for me, I mean, where are you at your journey with this piece?
I started playing it about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Okay, so you've not been in the situation of performing it in front of a live audience yet.
No, that's like going to be sometime in the summer. Like I've got lots of time, but
So there's the beautiful thing when you put this on a program, and I mean obviously if it's an exam program it's a different thing, but in a regular concert program, it's this moment where you start playing it, and there's this intake of breath in the room of all these people who think she started the wrong piece. Because not everybody knows this piece. In fact, I would say most of your audience won't know it. And if they've not been prepared for the fact that it's going to start with Bach, you really scare them. So actually, I think that starting it as you would start it if it was Bach is a very good way of dealing with that. Because, if you play it kind of differently, then I don't imagine that he meant it in any other way. Then it should be a confusion and what's going on within your audience. So I think trying to play it differently than you would play it if it was Bach kind of loses that in a way. But then with the Bach, there's so many ways you could play it. So I think it felt a bit too serious for that opening for me in the recording. So try the opening again and see how perky you can make it.
Where would you be like in the bow? Because I've kind of experimented.
I'd say it much lower down. So
lower down, okay.
This might go horribly wrong. I still don't know how to play this violin. Something like that. So there. I mean, he's written leggero. We want that feeling, because the trouble is up here, it doesn't really feel leggero. It feels kind of heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's lots of heavy to come. So I'd say get it to a place where the bow just naturally has a good bounce. Like you're not having to do too much.
That's too much.
No, so that you don't have to do too much.
Oh.
Let the bow do its job for itself. So make sure that to me that feels like you're kind of running out of steam because you've suddenly got confused, or that's how it should feel. Or you could go with the and then be like, what just happened? I mean, you could do it in so many different ways. You could turn that corner in so many different ways. But I think if you're going to do it in the run out of steam way, feel like you are. So rather than it feels too organised and too ordered for.
I'm kind of like giving away the surprise a bit.
Yeah.
Before it's happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
there are so many options. I would say go away and think about, and one concert will feel different from another concert. An acoustic will have an effect on how you feel that should go. An audience will as well. But yeah, be prepared that your body knows how to do it in multiple different ways, so that whatever mood takes you, you can go there. After that, I think there can be so much of a difference in character. The two felt too close to me. It felt like the two were the same piece, but they're not. They're two entirely different pieces. Brutalement. Fortissimo. Accents on every note.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, there's also a need to find a way to start that note. Because if you do the and we hear it before you start the note, it's already destroyed the excitement. I mean, I tend to sledgehammer there, which isn't a technically great thing to do probably, but it works. So I don't do it with force. I do it with weight of arm. So it's not having a bad effect on the sound. But you need to make sure you have enough speed of bow if you're doing that. So I don't touch the string beforehand. I go at it moving. Kind of. It was too gentle. Don't try it once, and it doesn't matter if it goes horribly wrong. I mean, it's only us. Just hit it. You're being very well behaved. You go. Really just whack the string, but do it as you're moving. So, I mean, not like that because my knee got in the way, but. That sounded better. It's just, it's finding a way of attacking that first note so you've actually got an accent on it. And it's an excitement, and it's a surprise and a shock to the audience. Whereas if you get, it's no longer a surprise or a shock. Okay. I would just say this is a general thing running through the whole thing. It's the same as in the Mozart beforehand, that it's really easy for the intervals in all of these, and the whole movement is semiquavers, for the intervals not to be quite kind of big enough or bright enough. So like when it's particularly E flats, everything feels just a little bit too not extreme enough. Everything feels too tempered. The intonation, it's so hard to get the intonation in this movement absolutely spot on because there's so many mad intervals. So it's one of those things that you just need to go away and really fix in your left hand. Just spend some good quality time with your left hand, playing double stops, playing just against the open strings, checking that the ring is working right with the instrument. But if you've only had it for such a short amount of time, that will come. So that was just something that I noticed in that run coming down, that just like it, because it's so much noise, actually you don't notice it so much there, but just go away and make sure that those intervals are as perfect as they need to be. Let's move on a little bit because this is all covering the same ground.
Can I ask a question about that bit actually?
Yeah.
Because I've been practicing like the intonation by doing kind of what you just did with the excerpts, like double stops. But yeah, for things like the dissonances, it's so hard to. Should I always really exaggerate them?
I tend to. But then some people would say that I go too far with that. It's a very musical intonation is a very personal thing. But I think in this music you need it to be, because so that's fine. If that's too close, it just sounds really, really kind of sour. You know, if it's too wide, that interval at the end, it just doesn't work. I mean, the things that bothered me most, like I say, there were a few places where E flats were really important, and they were always just a little bit too high. I'm just trying to remember where. I think it was that bit that I just played on the second page.
Yeah, there's a lot of E flats in that passage. So.
Yeah. So I think it's important to be fairly extreme, I find, in this music, because you know the dissonances, if you don't feel the beat between the two notes, they don't mean anything anymore. That's why it's great being able to play the violin rather than playing the piano, where it's, you know, it's all ruled out for you already. I just do want to say your oboe staccato was great. It sounded great. Where do you want to go from? Because I'm aware we've got small amounts of time. What's going to be the most helpful for you?
I think I agree with you that I need to bring out the voices. Like, I'm quite aware of what I want to bring out, but what I find so hard about, I find this the hardest movement out of all of the sonata, and I think it's because of the different string crossings in it. They kind of change like every 4 bars, and I sometimes struggle to like really bring out that one voice that I want when they're so fast.
Well, then it's, you know, it's one of those things that we have to be working on it, obviously, to exactly how it wants to be at a slower speed, and then gradually work that up. But don't just gradually work it up to the right speed, gradually work it up to above the right speed, so that you can play it as you want it but faster than you want it, so that when you come back to the right speed, actually you've got space to play the way you want it to be. I think that's something that we it's so easy to think, oh yeah, I've got it to the right speed now, but you never feel quite comfortable with it, because actually it's kind of like you've taken yourself to the place that's where you want to be, but it's uncomfortable. And actually, if you can get to the place that you want to be comfortable by taking it further than that, it just makes a massive difference to how you feel able to make music when it comes down to, you know, being on stage and having to do it. So I'd recommend doing that. Take it further than it needs to be, and you might find that helps. I think also, so for example, and then you've got, make sure that in the first one you figured out exactly physically what you have to do with the bow to make those accents work, so that you're not constantly climbing up the bow, because those sorts of things are so important, so that you've got enough bow for the accent, so that the third note, then the E, you're not using too much bow, so that so long, medium, short, medium. I can't talk and play at the same time. Long, medium, short, medium. So there's a bit of that feeling going on, so that you're always taking yourself back to the right place, which means that you've got enough bow then to play the note with the accent on it. And that's actually something that's really important when it comes to the minimus at the end, that you aren't doing, that is actually in the score. If you look back to the front page of the score, there's the page that's got all of that stuff on it.
Oh yeah.
And that mark on the first note of each beat in the meno mosso.
Meno mosso.
So on the last page.
Oh, on the last page, sorry. Oh, the line. Yeah, the line.
Yeah, do you know what that means?
Oh, I have checked it, but
I know. I just had to check to make sure that
bow or like.
It's like you use the whole bow.
Oh, the whole bow. Yeah.
I mean, obviously you can't use the whole bow because otherwise you can't play the notes afterwards. But because you're doing,
yeah,
which means that note doesn't come out, and it's actually that speed of bow through it. The first note, as long as your left hand's in the right place, then the other notes, the arpeggio, looks after itself. As long as your arm's loose, you don't need to worry about those. So actually, can we actually jump to that, and can you play that for me again? And think about that. Just use as much bow as you can on that first note, and don't think too much about the other notes. So, in the first ones, that's already a lot better, but it still feels like you're thinking too much about the other notes.
Yeah, I think because I had it in my mind that they all had to be like really even, so that's made me no. Okay.
Not at all. Just sit on that first one for a minute. Just sit on the first chord, so you're not having to worry about changing chords, and just play until you feel really free with it. It's really hard doing this with my elbow in the back of the chair.
It's just one of those bits where you just look like a crazy person doing it.
Oh, you do, and it's fine. I mean, it is crazy music. It doesn't matter if you look crazy.
Okay.
You're moving off the first note too quickly. So just play it once without. Keep your left hand in the right position, but just play. And then gradually after that grow into. And find how long it takes you to get to the right place. I think that your arm isn't as free as it might be.
Okay.
Your right arm. Do you have any tension at all in your shoulder, or do you feel like you're holding your right arm? It just feels from the sound of what you're doing there, that you
feel like I'm not like completely free. I think it's because I'm trying. Yeah, again, I'm trying to like control every note, and I'm
don't.
Yeah.
Just let there be as much weight as you can get into your right arm. Have everything relaxed. Your knees, your stomach, your shoulder, your back, everything. Every bit of you needs to be relaxed for this to work. So I think you can still do with using more of your bow on the first note of each group, but it's such an improvement on what you were doing before. I know you can figure that one out for yourself. When it comes to the ones where the notes in at the top, make sure you don't then accent the bottom of the chord, because that's not doing anything. It's not moving anywhere. So if you've accented the bottom, no, not my hair. That's not good. No idea. I have no hair left, and I have no idea when I'm going to be able to get a rehair. Danger. It's fine. I've only got one concert until the end of March. I would say, yeah, if you accent that bottom note at that point, it totally takes away from the top. So be really careful that you're you've gone from you're totally aware of the fact with your muscles, with your brain, that at that point, at that beginning of that bar, you no longer hit the front of that note. So that and then that you go quickly through the first 3 strings, so that you've got as much bow as you want for the top note, and make sure that you use a similar proportion of your bow for that top note as you have done for the bottom note in the previous 2 bars.
I was going to ask, did it come across like too, because it's on the E string, I didn't know whether it was too like horrible or...
Nah. It's the DA0 and it's enormous. It's this when you're playing this in a big kind of church-like place, you suddenly get to this point, and people always come up to you afterwards and say, it was like there was an organ playing, I couldn't believe it was only one of you, because it has this massive effect at this point, and it should do. Don't worry about being too big. You can't be too big.
I actually can't wait until I can play this somewhere that has some reverb.
Honestly, it's so exciting when you do. And and that is one of those things that's been an incredible thing for everybody during lockdown, that you the first time that you go out, so for me, I think it was last August, I went to do a recording in a church, and it was the first time I'd played my violin since lockdown had started in anywhere other than my bedroom or my living room. And suddenly hearing sound back after the note, it took me a good few minutes to get used to what that was like. It was weird, so strange, but wonderful.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So yeah, and I can promise you, this point in a proper acoustic will blow your mind. It will be so much fun. So don't worry about being too big. Go for Cecily's here. Go from the beginning of the minimum or so. And don't worry about being too big.
Okay.
Go for it. It's so much better.
It's a bit more free, but yeah.
Yeah, and try not to be too organized. I know that's probably the wrong thing to tell you. When you have to play the third finger at the bottom and at the top. As long as you just get there, you can get there fast. So don't think that you have to. Don't try and play every note. Go for the bigger picture, because by trying to play every note, you will play all of the right notes in the right place, and it will have the absolute wrong effect. And if you go for the effect, even if you don't quite catch it, people won't realise that you haven't, because it will sound like you did. But hopefully you will. 99% of the time you will. But it's better that you have the effect than that you have everything in the right place, because otherwise there's no effect, if that makes sense. Is there anything specific, just before Cecily comes back and says, you have to stop, is there anything specific that you'd like any help with, or like any ideas about?
Yeah, really specific place, like bar 27, where I've got when I've got like the quiet stuff, I just find it way more difficult to kind of bring out what I need. Especially with like when you've got an open string and you have to like let it go. Is that something I'm thinking too much about, or?
I mean, I think maybe there, because I think if you're really aware of where the musical line is, so where the tune is within the four notes of each group, and you can find a colour or a warmth for it. It's not necessarily a matter of bringing it out by making it louder or by putting a mini accent on it. I mean, obviously there are so many places where he's marked accents, but for the places where he hasn't, figure out, is this somewhere where actually it's about the harmonies, so all of those notes are important, and what I should be showing is the moving notes, but not in a sense that they're a melody? Or is this a place where there is a melody within this? And then how do I want to do it? Do I want to show it by having a little bit more weight in the sound? Or do I just want to colour those notes a little bit with vibrato? Because that's also there as an option that has exactly the same effect. I think don't worry too much, because gradually, if you've only been playing it for a few weeks, your arms will get used to it's not an easy piece. Obviously the coordination in this movement is really difficult, so as your arms get used to the coordination issues, practice it with rhythms, which I'm sure you do already, so that you're helping yourself with coordination, because that's like speed learning for coordination, I find. Practice it. I practice this with like going through an accent on the first semiquaver, an accent on the semiquaver, second semiquaver, going through the different permutations. Again, that's a thing that I do for the coordination issues in it. And as you get used to all of the coordination, and you get used to how it feels for your arms, how much weight you need, how much flexibility you need in your wrist and your fingers, you'll probably find that those things fix themselves. But I think don't worry so much about that. So think about musically what you want to say with it, obviously, but don't worry about it and don't overthink. Because obviously, like I say, there are so many places where he has marked exactly where he wants accents, and those we do need to worry about. But the other places, it's it doesn't necessarily have to be that certain things are brought out in the same way. Cecily's back. Any other quick questions?
I have a generic one.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cecily minds if I ask it. It's just about memorization. Like, I just wondered if you had any tips for memorizing music, and if you think generally it like matters too. And again, I've done this quite quick, but I just found it so hard, like such a hard piece to memorize because of the crazy notes. So yeah, any tips would be great.
I'm a terrible person to ask about this. I was one of those annoying kids who just memorized, and I didn't really think about what I was doing. It was in my head and my fingers. I think I learnt by ear. I certainly wasn't learning it by like any of the sensible ways. And then when I was late teenage, I guess, I suddenly started occasionally having memory slips, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know how to fix them because I didn't have an actual way of memorizing. So if I lost myself in something, I had no idea how to find myself. I mean, I knew what was good. If it was with accompaniment, I knew what was going on, but I didn't know how to find myself, how to find my way back into. And it was a while before I figured out that there are so many different ways of learning and different ways of memorizing. And my default is always oral memory and finger pattern memory. So that is definitely something that's super helpful, is thinking about the finger patterns and making sure you're really 100% clear about always what the finger patterns are, and they will gradually work their way in. but also thinking about an analytical memory of something. So you're thinking about small time analytical shapes within a group, shapes within a bar, shapes within a phrase, how a phrase turns, the harmonies, all of those things. But then also the longer term, so thinking about the analysis of, this is helpful analysis, not dry analysis. So, because like at school we got taught analysis, and I didn't understand how that had anything to do with what I did as a violinist, which is really pathetic and appalling that I didn't see that. But it was a long time before I realised actually it's not just really useful and important, it's also quite fun and exciting. But it helps your memorising of something. I mean, things like, oh, he goes into a different key here. Oh, she does a different rhythm in this time when this phrase comes. Those sides of things are really important for memorising of something. And I also find it's really helpful to think visually of what the page looks like. So I use that in my memory of things as well, so I can sort of see the score moving, but in the pages as it's printed on the copy I learnt from. So it always confuses me if I see a different version of something. But actually, I will say I play less and less from memory now. I find that when life is normal, obviously right now it's not, but when normal things are going on, staple rep that I play all the time, yeah, I'll play that from memory. But I don't feel that, I mean, it's a fairly new phenomenon comparatively, you know, going back to Liszt, that memorization was a thing. And it does bother me that you will get, I mean, I had a review of, I played Stravinsky Concerto, and I chose to use the music. The music was way low down. I wasn't staring at it. Various mates who were there said they only noticed that I was using music because I turned between movements. And some reviewer complained about the fact that I'd used the music for this piece. Well, you know, when it's not staple repertoire, I don't think there should be any expectation. I don't think it makes us better musicians. If you're the kind of player who the music gets in the way for you, then of course that's a totally personal thing. But I think if you don't have that strong feeling, I must play from memory, I don't see that there's any issue with playing from music. I mean, it doesn't mean I've learnt the piece less well. It doesn't mean that I'm going to play less well. You know, I'd rather hear somebody play comfortably from music than uncomfortably from memory. Anytime. I don't really care when I'm listening to somebody whether they've got music or not. And I think it's nice to see that more and more people are comfortably having music up for concertos. And I think the way our job works now, we're all jumping from one thing to the next thing. It's not like the good old days where you had 3 days in a train and a boat to get to the next concert where you could figure out the next program. And actually where quite often you would have, you know, a small number of programs or repertoire that you'd be playing every season and repeating and repeating. We don't have lives like that now. And our brains are only so big.
Yeah.
So I think it's not, I don't think playing from memory is a big deal. But obviously we grow up being told that it is. So actually part of the issue is walking out of that thing that we've been told is kind of failure if you don't play everything from memory. And it's nonsense. It really is. But it's useful to be able to use our memories at the same time. And, you know, there are certain pieces that I will always be more comfortable playing from memory than from music. Just because that's how I learned them.
Yeah, they're really useful tips. Thank you. That's
good. Thanks.
Thank you.
And well done. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I think you're going to when you get to play it in front of an audience. Can I say one thing?
Of course.
Because just as I was getting my music out for Ysaye, the front page fell out, and I wrote down this thing that Ysaye, it's supposed to be a quote from Ysaye, and it's just such an amazing thing, and it always makes me feel kind of both useless and amazing before I play the pieces, because I always read it before I play one of the sonatas. Anyway, he wrote, "A violin master must be a violinist, a thinker, a poet, a human being. He must have known hope, love, passion, and despair. He must have run the gamut of the emotions in order to express them all in his playing." And it's such an amazing quote, and it's just so totally encapsulates what's in that book of music. So
That's amazing. So now is when we actually have a little time, and I'm so sorry if I'm the bad guy sitting here saying you have to stop. It's not that at all. Does anyone have a question or two that they'd like to ask? I have a couple more in my head, but I'd rather hear yours. Yes, Laura.
Hi, Fenella.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I was just wondering, when you're listening to auditions for chamber orchestra, other than like obviously the like basic clean sort of playing, what you're particularly looking for out of the hundreds that turn up?
So, I mean, if I'm completely honest, everybody's always looking for different things. So my ex-boss in that orchestra just wanted everybody to be like perfect and sexy. And that just totally didn't interest me. So for me, it was always who interacted with the pianist, because the auditions were 99% with piano. And the people who ignored the pianist, I was fairly sure probably we wouldn't be able to play very well together in the group. And what I'm always interested in, you know, I want to hear somebody who understands stylistic stuff, but who also, and who has that sense of pulse. That's so important. The pulse thing is terribly, terribly important, because if you've got somebody who's sort of running ahead and then coming back, the likely, I know that everybody, you know, we all go crazy in auditions because they're horrible, but somebody who does that is liable to do that again in a group. So hearing somebody who's got a good sense of pulse, that's really important. And like you say, obviously something needs to be clean and well prepared and, you know, well done. But, you know, there have been so many times when I've heard somebody and I can hear what they're capable of, even though they've obviously got extremely nervous. And they're never going to be in that situation when they're in the group. So I always find it difficult if people are dismissive of somebody who you can hear that they've just got extremely nervous. But so I think it depends on who's listening to you. So some people will give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Some people won't. But generally speaking, you know, we've all been there. So we all understand that, you know, that it's a horrible situation. I think a sound that is a sound that is going to blend in a group is also extremely important. So having a sound that, you know, there's too much portato, that's always going to be a warning bell as well, because you know that that's not going to fit well in a group of other people, or vibrato that's too extreme. But you know, you've not got any of these problems, so don't worry about them. But you know, that's just sort of general things.
Yeah.
But yeah, just musicality that's interesting and nice, and where you can hear that somebody has really thought about, you know, the harmonies and the shape of the music, and you know, when it's the concertos, that they understand what's happening within the orchestra as well. So there's a real difference. If it's without piano, there's a real difference between the people who you feel like they don't know what's happening in the orchestra, or the people who you can feel them hearing the orchestra as they're playing. You know, so there's something in the way somebody plays that is really different in those two different situations. So I think all of those things, and yeah, and if there's any way that you can have fun with it, just enjoy the music, because at the end of the day, somebody you know, you're going to play well, whatever, but somebody who is enjoying the music is much more engaging than somebody who's just being right.
Thank you.
There we go. Don't know if that's at all helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? I'm looking at a sea of names with no hands up. All right, well, I'm going to ask you one more question and then we'll call it a night. So my last question for you has to do with a little bit with lockdown and how you've dealt with the almost year being basically off stage. But more than that, I mean, I have been so inspired by all of the playing that you've done and your weekly, or they were more times than once a week, your homemade concerts with all of the incredible new music that you brought to that, and but then I started thinking about it, it's like, no, Fenella did this kind of stuff before lockdown. You are a project person, I think. You come up with things that inspire you and you make the projects happen. That's at least my impression, having gotten to know you a bit. And I wonder if you have any advice or any insight or just want to talk about how, when a project comes to your mind, how do you make it happen?
Okay, there's a lot in there.
Just a little question to finish off the day.
I mean, I think all of that, in fact, all of those things, whether it's things that I did in lockdown or the things that I've done over the last few years, they're all things that come out of necessity. I'm not the violinist who went out and won competitions. That wasn't my thing. I wasn't that sort of player. And I tended, you know, the two times I decided to try and see what doing a competition was like, I fell flat on my face. I divided the jury down the middle in one of them, and I got yelled at by the head of the jury when I had to talk to them afterwards, because I thought he was going to hit me. He was like, "What did you think you were doing? You got the lowest mark and the highest mark for that round. Of course you weren't going to get through. You can't play like that. If you ever do a competition again, don't play like that." I was actually slightly scared. And I mean, this was after I'd finished studying, and I'd never been with a teacher who did that sort of thing. You know, I was never sent to a competition by a violin teacher. So I kind of missed all of that world, which is one way of building a career. And so I kind of didn't really fit in. I didn't have an obvious path that I should be following. You know, various mates were going down one direction, other people going down another direction, and there wasn't a real obvious place for me to be. And so I think I just had to find places that nobody else was. And so, you know, I like with the Bach thing, I mean, that was born out of whiskey. It was born out of, because at that point I was playing in a piano trio, and we'd done a bunch of competitions the previous couple of years. So that's when I did then do competitions, was with the trio. And we'd just done Melbourne competition, and we'd spent 6 months preparing for it, and we'd played only the competition repertoire for 6 months, and we prepared like crazy because we knew we were invited to the actual live rounds, and I've never prepared for anything like that. And it got to the performances in Australia, and I heard because it was all on the radio, I heard the recordings afterwards, and I totally didn't recognize my own playing. I mean, it was so ironed out, and I tend to be someone, at least, you know, if you can't say anything else about them, it tends to be recognizable, that it's me. And I was in such shock and so upset when I heard that. I mean, I was really happy because it was good playing, but upset because it didn't sound like me, and I needed to do something for myself to find who I was again. So I was just going to do like a lunchtime program of unaccompanied music, because I thought, if you know, I have to find it within myself rather than expect other people to give it to me. And chatted to a composer friend who, because I'd originally thought maybe I'd commission one little piece, get some money for that, and ended up thinking, oh, I've never played all of the Bach sonatas and partitas. I've never played all of the movements. And I had a violin teacher at the beginning who'd said, you can't be a truly good violinist until you've played all of the Bach sonatas and partitas in public, which is nonsense. But good to learn them, good to perform them. And I thought I'd then came up with the idea of commissioning one partner piece for each sonata and partita. And fortunately, I'd say one thing, if you have an idea, don't think it through. Because if you think it through and realize how much work it's going to be and how much effort it's going to be, how much fundraising it's going to be, you probably won't try. So I would have been massively put off. I don't think I'd even started asking composers if I'd realised the vast sums of money that were actually involved. So I had to raise, I think, 25 grand even just for the commission fees. It was insane. Find out, if you're into commissioning, there are lots of options available for getting funding. For places like PRSF, Arts Council, if you have something that's interesting and ticks all their boxes, like getting music to people, then they can be super helpful. With things like that, always make sure you get some way of talking to them. So if you're applying to the Arts Council, always talk to them, because they're far more likely to be positive towards you and helpful they are super helpful, and will help you through an application. So don't be afraid of asking people for help. Know what it is you want to do. Find ways of being a musician that excite you. There isn't a prescriptive path. Everybody these days, everybody has a different path. So find the things that you love doing. At the end of the day, it's the most important thing. But with most of the things I've done, certainly over the last year, have been born out of necessity, and suddenly not having a job and not being able to pay the rent. And yet, don't be afraid of thinking, actually, this is a job. And people who love music, people who would normally go to concerts, will support musicians, and people like that will tend to understand that we don't live in money trees. I've had some amazing support from incredible people over the last year who've, I'll suddenly get a message through from my PayPal from somebody saying, oh, I just thought you might have run out of strings, so here's some money for some strings. Or those just amazing little messages from people like that. So know that what you do is really worth a lot. I think that's a really important thing, because there's an expectation that because we love what we do, that people can expect us to do it for nothing. And there's this constant, oh well, you'll get, lots of people will come and listen to you, or you'll get lots of exposure. And at the end of the day, if you wouldn't ask a plumber to come in and fix your house for free, then you probably shouldn't be expecting a musician to do their job for free as well. But obviously there are times when we need to or we want to. But don't ever forget that what we do is so important and worth so much for so many people. Sorry, that was...
No, that's... I think it's great to hear, actually, because it's very easy, especially right now, and the really big class project certainly came out of necessity for me as well. Not so much in a monetary way, although I've been very, very pleased to be able to pay all my guest teachers. So thank you to those who support the big class. There's some of you in the audience here today, so thank you very much. But it's easy to lose track of the fact that what we do has real value and real worth, and that 200 years from now, when people look back on the great epidemic of 2020, it'll be things like the art that came out of this time that will give people a window into what our world was like. The same as when we look back at 1820, we see a little bit more about what life was like in 1820 because of the music that we're able to play. So thank you for bringing that to light. I think it's not said enough, and it's so important. I'm also really happy to hear you say that we shouldn't be afraid to talk to each other about our ideas, because I think that's absolutely the number one thing that we can do. Is if you want to make something happen, talk to someone about it. Yeah. And maybe they'll shoot holes in your idea, and that'll either discourage you or make it a stronger idea. I know in my quartet we certainly took on a number of things without full knowledge of what it would entail, and like you, we never would have done it had we known. But through talking to people and a certain kind of naive bravery, you can make things happen.
I think that's the thing. It's being brave, or being always making sure that you totally believe.
Oh, come back.
Is that my video?
Your video. Yeah, you're here.
Yeah. You keep dropping me. Hello.
Oh, you're here.
Sorry, it keeps saying I've been dropped by the host. You don't.
Oh. We haven't. Maybe Zoom is telling us that our time is up and we should call it a night. Which is probably true. Oh. Mark just put a message through that my dog jumped on him and his phone fell in the space bar. So that explains that. Yeah. But it is probably time for us to wrap up. If there are any more questions, we can take them. Otherwise, I will tell you a little bit about next week. And a huge thank you to Fenella. Really, just...
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was... You were asking about all of the things that I've done during lockdown. Well, since the last lockdown, I decided to take a little bit of a break in the November lockdown from playing, because I never had a real break.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember the last time I had a couple of weeks without playing the violin, so I decided to take that time off, and coming back after Christmas. So I had a little bit of work in December, and then had a break over Christmas again. Coming back after Christmas and seeing this acres of blank diary. I have one concert on Sunday. I've had to cancel my work in Germany because of Brexit. I'm looking ahead at this vast, empty diary. It was so nice to get your message saying, do I want to do the class? Because it makes me feel like an actual musician. And that's so lovely. And it's great to hear all this wonderful playing as well.
Yeah, bravo.
Congratulations to all three of you.
Yeah, Libby, Ellie, and Helena, you all played beautifully today. So next week, I'm doing these weekly through March, because why not? Next week, we have Kyra Humphreys, no relation to Fenella Humphreys. She and I were in Cleveland together 10 million years ago and haven't seen each other since, but I'm very excited to have her teach. We'll have the same sort of thing, a mix of standard rep and some excerpts. Come back on Thursday, and if you are inspired to send us a little bit of money, you can do that through PayPal. The link will be on YouTube and Facebook. So thank you, and good night. Stop the stream now.